Whitney with Koala Kettle's Baby Wearing Education, and today I'm going to do a talk-through video about common misconceptions with how to adjust your ring sling. So for this video, I'm using a short Proverbs 31 ring sling. This is in her Noel Christmassy colorway.
Can I eat this?
Yes, you can have it. And so I'm going to put it on. So one of the main misconceptions, just even before you start doing anything, is people a lot of times think that their baby is bigger than it actually is. And so they think, oh my gosh, I need all this space. And they have this sling super loose to begin with, thinking, I need to get my baby in here. I need to be able to make sure I can make this seat, do all this stuff. And so they make this really big pocket to begin with. That's going to be a lot of adjusting later. It's almost better to have to kind of wiggle your baby in, because then you're not adjusting as much. You can always kind of loosen it a little if you need to, but starting with a ton of extra slack is just going to make it harder to adjust at the end. So especially for a newborn who's tiny, you really don't need all of this space. Like, you can see how much space is in here. You don't need that. One of the easiest ways to do it is the elbow trick. A lot of people like this, where you kind of put your arm in, just kind of hold the sling, and then you're just going to kind of tighten it to fit to where your elbow is. Because you're like, okay, my baby's going to sit here on my hip. Okay, I'm going to do this for a toddler. Or my baby's going to be in the front more, so I'm going to bring it closer here, make it a little smaller. Whatever works for you. I personally eyeball it, but I'm used to figuring out sizes, so it's pretty easy for me to eyeball it. Sometimes when you're just getting used to it, it helps to use your elbow, just because you have something to kind of visualize. Okay, this is my child's head. This is where I want them to be. They need to be about this far out. So I've made my sling quite a bit smaller now, you can see. And I'm making sure that it's still flat. Now, when you're adjusting your ring sling, ring placement is always something people are like, oh my gosh, I can't get my rings to stay up. They always are dropping. And a big suggestion that I see a lot is, oh, start with your rings behind your shoulder. Start with your rings at the top of your shoulder, almost at the back, at your shoulder blade, things like that. You don't need to. If you're adjusting from behind your shoulder blades, you're actually adjusting in a less efficient way than if you adjust towards your sling. So here's what I'm saying. If you're starting with your rings all the way up here or all the way back here, see how it's behind my shoulder now, or at the top of my shoulder, what's likely happening is you're pulling straight down, which is changing the direction of your fabric, which is pulling in different places, causing your rings to drop. So I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So I have my rings overly high at the top of my shoulder, actually almost touching the back of my shoulder. So this is my demo baby, and he's wearing a 3-month onesie. So I'm going to put him in, wiggle his little feet in. And I'm going to create his little seat here and get him deep in there. Okay. So now I'm going to adjust. Okay, now I want my rings to come down. So watch where I'm pulling. See, I'm pulling straight down and my rings are dropping. Pulling straight down and my rings are dropping. Especially if I pull on the outside straight down. My rings have now dropped to that corsage high up rings height. But they're lower. See, they're kind of lower than baby. And there's still slack. There's actually a lot of slack. If this were a real baby, I'm pulling all of this slack here, and I'm pulling all of this here. If this were a real baby, especially a newborn who doesn't have the trunk control, this baby is going to tip. This baby is going to end up over here, because it's not fully adjusted. There's spots in your ring sling that haven't been fully tightened out. Even if I'm going to fan out my shoulder a little bit back here so it's a little more comfortable, it's still got slack that didn't get tightened out. So now I'm going to take baby out and I'm going to adjust in the direction of the sling. So I'm going to pre-fan out my threading here so it's nice and easy. Okay. So now I have my rings right where I want them. Yes, baby. I'm doing a video. Because I need to. So I'm starting with my rings where I need them. I'm starting with it off my shoulder, not terribly far down to my elbow, just kind of right in that middle section of my shoulder. My rings are where I want them. I've got a small pocket, and I'm ready to go get the baby. So here comes my baby. And again, I'm going to put him in. Need his little seat. And now I still have slack. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to think of my sling in a third for the top, a third for the middle, and a third for the bottom. I'm going to adjust towards those points because that's the direction the sling material is coming from. Without changing the direction, using small motions, it's going to keep your sling in place. So here's my slack in the top here. So I'm getting this top piece, lifting baby's bum, and just pulling a little bit out. I'm grabbing my middle towards his back, pulling that out. Grabbing this bottom towards the top of his diaper, pulling that out. I still have a little bit of slack here. I'm just going to do it again. Towards the top of his neck, his shoulder. Yes, baby. Towards his midsection. Towards the top of his diaper. Now he's in there. I don't have slack stuck anywhere because I've been able to follow the fabric. My rings didn't drop. They're still nice and high, corsage height, and baby's nice and snug. You're going to have a more efficient tightening if you tighten towards the sling in small motions and you follow the direction of the fabric. Your rings will stay in place. You'll be able to tighten through the sling a lot better than pulling straight down. So I'm going to do that quickly. Let's loosen this back up. So then I'm just going to go just like that, super fast. So again, if I'm having my rings way high, I'm needing to start with more slack anyways. And then I'm adjusting down. And I'm changing the direction of my fabric. And I've still got this section here. I've got this looseness here that is not coming out. So the efficient way to adjust towards your sling. Okay, so that's one of the biggest ones. The other one that happens a lot, especially with newborns or babies that don't have a lot of trunk control, is my baby's leaning. My baby's tipping, my baby's leaning. I can't get them to stay upright. Somehow they're always going to the side. And that, again, goes back to thinking of your sling in thirds and how you're adjusting it. So I'm getting a tiny little pocket here. Fixing my threading. They've adjusted it a bunch of times. So I've got my sling where I want it to be. Now I'm going to get baby. When you're putting your baby in, and when you're adjusting, it's really common to get baby in, to make their seat right here in the front, knee to knee, tuck them up, and say, okay, they're in. Now I'm gonna adjust and just tighten right here. 1, 2, 3. Baby's in.
And then say I'm
But
free, mommy. And then
there's
say
all
I'm
of
free,
this
mommy.
extra.
And then I'm gonna say free.
You're saying 3? Okay. There's all of this extra slack
I'm
now.
free.
Look at how much slack I'm
free.
pulling around
I'm
this
free.
baby. You are 3. If this were a newborn and I was walking around and baby's moving, I'm moving, what's going to end up happening is this baby's going to end up wiggling in this slack and end up over here. So, when you are adjusting,
Where daddy, mama? Where daddy?
you want to make sure that you're going behind your back here and pulling it. You're going to bring as much slack to the front as you can. All of your slack comes to the front towards your rings. Make sure that you're creating your seat with it snug on your sling side, and have your extra over here. The biggest portion to keep your baby upright is going to be this middle third because it's stabilizing their trunk, stabilizing their spine. You can go ahead and gather. I've got quite a bit of it in my hands, and I'm pulling that all the way around. Look at all that I just pulled out. And I started with a fairly small sling. Look at all this. See all that's moving? All of that needs to come out. So I'm going to adjust in small motions and adjust that out. Now suddenly, baby's much more secure. There's not this extra material here. Baby's not going to be able to wiggle nearly as much, and they're going to stay a lot more upright and supported because this piece of fabric is now going across their back, keeping them nice and upright, nice and snug. This middle section is really easy to miss when you're adjusting. So make sure you're going in that tail, finding those middle pieces, adjusting towards their back, especially if your baby's leaning. That's probably where the slack is. It's right there. The other thing that a lot of people are struggling with, I see, is I can't get my baby right in the center. They don't want to be right here. It's just not comfortable. The rings are super close to their face. It bothers me. I'm just not comfortable with it. Totally fine. Even in a newborn, that's totally fine. You can absolutely cheat your baby over one breast. They're still completely in a front carry. They are still fully supported and stabilized, but they're right here. Over one breast, so they've got a little bit more space away from the rings.
I need help, mommy. I need help.
You need help? What do you need help, babe?
Where's my bacon?
Okay, give me a sec.
I can't.
So they're still nice and straight. They're still going to be right in your front. It's just instead of being directly under your chin, in between your breasts, they're over one. Some babies find this more comfortable because they can kind of naturally curl over you. Larger busted wearers find that to be a little more comfortable usually too, because it's a little bit hard to situate your babe between your breasts if you're larger chested. It's all personal preference, but you don't have to be in the middle. You can absolutely go just slightly over one breast so that baby's just a little bit past that center and has a little bit more cushion, a little more to kind of hold on to. Your rings are still a little bit further away, but they're still in a front carry. And again, it's all just personal preference, but it's an option. The last big misconception is I need to bring my seat for my baby all the way up in between us. So I need to have this seat come all the way up to their belly button, and I'm going to make this big pocket for them that they're just going to slouch down into. Yes, you want a deep pocket, but bringing that section all the way up towards their middle, like towards their belly button, means that the sling itself is scooping around their legs. And so when they wiggle, their legs are going to be able to come down because that center section is still tucked up between you guys, but there's not a ton of tension supporting the knees. So if you think of your sling like a hammock, your sling seat like a hammock, when you as an adult sit down in a hammock, naturally what happens is your bottom sinks deep down into the hammock part, and the edge of that hammock sling comes up in a straight line, and it kicks your knees up. It's taut, and it keeps your knees higher than your bottom, being in that straight line. That's the idea you want in your sling. You want that to happen. So you want to think of that taut bottom rail straight across, keeping their knees nice and high. It doesn't have to be this big scoop up in between you guys. It's just a good third of the sling is supporting booty to knees. Get that deep little scoop in there with a straight line across, and they'll be nice and taut right here, and it'll help to alleviate a lot of the wiggling down. Well, I'm going to go take care of my actual kiddos now. So I hope that helped. If there's any questions, feel free to reach out. You can find me on Facebook at Koala Cuddles Baby Wearing Education. You can message me there, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Have a great day. Bye.